Hello again. I'm still Cap Daniels, and we're still reading from I Am Gypsy. Today, we'll continue with Chapter 8, Tuesday. The sun came up just as it always did, and the sky looked like any normal day, but nothing normal was going on around me. Papa was back. Cappy, you can leave the boat here in the marina, but I can't let you stay on board. You have to find some place to go. Cappy looked up at the sky. No, I won't be leaving her here. I'll find a nice hurricane hole for her somewhere, and we'll ride it out together. That's up to you, Cappy, but they're saying it might be a Category 4 by the time it gets here tomorrow. Is that right? Category 4, huh? That's what they're saying, mumbled Papa. That's 131 to 155, ain't it? Yeah, Cappy, it is. That's a real storm. Cappy grabbed my winch as if he were holding on for dear life. It's going to be one for the history books, I reckon. Yeah, it is. You need anything, Cappy? I'm going to be heading home soon. See what I can do to get the house ready. No, I've got everything I need. Good luck to you, Greg. You too, Cappy. Papa walked away. He looked back twice. I don't know what he was thinking, but I suspect he was wondering if he'd ever see me and Cappy again. I'll be back, Gypsy. Don't you leave without me. Cappy climbed up on the dock, looking every day of his age. He disappeared, and I secretly hoped he wouldn't come back. I didn't know what was coming, but everybody was scared. I wanted Cappy to be safe. He didn't need to be out in that storm. He needed to be someplace that didn't touch the water, someplace that wasn't salty. But I knew he'd be back. Just like I knew he would, he came back with biscuit crumbs in his beard and a big to-go cup of black coffee. He also had 2 big diesel cans with him, and he poured the fuel into my tank, even though I didn't want it. Maybe diesel was like coffee. My sails were gone. Cappy had taken them down and stowed them away in the locker below my deck. Anywhere we went was going to be because of that nasty, noisy, stinky diesel. I guessed maybe I needed that engine after all. We motored out of the marina and things just kept getting more and more eerie. There were no birds. The big pelicans who usually dived on bait just outside the marina were nowhere in sight. The seagulls who squawked and begged for every morsel they could find were missing. The wind had picked up enough to produce ominous whitecaps on the bay. A few dolphins scurried about, but even they seemed to know something was wrong. One of the huge Navy ships was anchored out in the middle of the bay. Behind that ship, a line of big sailboats, also at anchor, tugged on their moorings in the 20-knot precursor to the worst storm any of us had ever seen. Anchoring in the open was the only possibility of survival. Remaining in the marina meant certain destruction against the rigid docks and unforgiving rocks of the shore. For the big boats, that was an option, but not for me. Those boats weighed 50,000 pounds or more. That's more than twice what I weighed. Their rigging was heavier, and their hulls were even thicker. The safety they expected from the open bay would be almost as bad for me as the rocks on the shore. Cappy was taking me someplace safe, I hoped. I think we'll go to Pearl Bayou. What do you think, Gypsy? He was asking me where I thought we should anchor to survive the storm together. I didn't know what was best, so I silently trusted him. We watched other boats motor into other bayous and sloughs, and Cappy looked longingly into those coves, obviously wondering if those were better, safer options. Ultimately, we motored on. Pearl Bayou was almost full of boats of every description. There were bizarre sailboats with 3 hulls and even double enders whose sterns looked like their bows. There were power boats and even a big ketch. A ketch is a gorgeous boat that can do a lot of things I couldn't do. It has 2 masts, a main mast and a mizzen mast, and can carry 3 sails and be trimmed in 1,000 different ways to make its family comfortable on board. I'd never be a ketch, but I was tall and proud, even though I only had 1 mast and 2 sails. But ultimately, none of that mattered when a Category 4 hurricane was less than 24 hours away. We motored through the maze of boats, and Cappy finally picked a spot in the back of the bayou. It was just deep enough for my keel, wouldn't stick in the mud, and just wide enough to put out plenty of anchor road so I could swing around when the wind changed directions. I wondered why no one else had chosen that spot. It was like they'd been saving it just for me. Cappy put out the big, heavy anchor and let the chain follow it to the bottom. He tied it off and let me drift back a dozen feet before letting more chain slide into the water. Over and over, he repeated the process until it let out 200 feet of chain. Next came a bridle, a pair of heavy nylon straps that held the anchor chain to my bow. The diesel came back to life, and I braced myself for the strain that was coming. Cappy pulled my transmission into reverse and began to back down on the anchor. He pulled hard against the anchor chain so the anchor would bury itself deeply in the muddy bottom of the bayou and hopefully stay there through the storm. With my diesel pulling as hard as it could, we stopped moving, and I felt myself shudder as my propeller tried to keep pulling us backward but couldn't overcome the anchor. I felt securely anchored, and my diesel fell silent. Then something strange happened. Cappy started talking to someone else. He wasn't talking to me, and he wasn't using the radio or telephone. There was no one else aboard, yet he was still talking. "You know, I ain't never asked you for much," I heard him say, "but there ain't nothing normal about any of this. I'd really appreciate it if you'd see fit to keep me and Gypsy safe through this thing. I'd like to see them grandbabies again, and me and Gypsy's got a lot left to talk about. So look after us if you would. Amen." Who's he talking to? Whoever it is, I hope he was listening. There was no green flash that night, but the sunset was astonishing and wholly unforgettable. The purples consumed the sky, while the dancing and rolling with the reds and oranges that longed to embrace the ever-darkening heavens. The sun seemed to fear the coming storm would devour even her. So she poured herself across the canvas of the sky, painting, perhaps, the final sunset there would ever be.